Hey everyone. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about argument structure with a focus on thesis. So I'm going to show this chart a few times. It's the tree chart. In this case, we have claim at the top there, but tree would be thesis, reasons, and evidence. For the purposes of our class, thesis and claim are the same thing. So let's just take a look at the example I've got here. The claim is donuts are the best breakfast food for a busy college student. Reasons that they're cheap, easy to carry around, and then evidence where we can back up those reasons by using, for example, the price of a donut at Safeway. So the first element we should talk about is the claim or the thesis. So here's some components of a good thesis statement. It should be debatable. So that doesn't mean that, just that it's possible to make an argument against it, but there has to be a credible argument against it. So you have to find in your research credible arguments for your claim and some credible arguments against it as well. It has to be argumentative. And so I'll show you some examples in a second of some things that are not argumentative statements. And so keep that one on hold for a second here. It should be specific. We've talked about this before with your inquiry question as well. I don't want you to have a really broad or vague inquiry question to guide your research, and I certainly don't want you to have a broad or vague claim. It should be really specific what you're arguing, and it should also be clear. So when I say clear, there should be clarity in terms of what you're arguing, but also clarity that it is your thesis statement. So make sure to put it near the beginning of your paper, and a format that generally works really well is to put your main claim and then your reasons for that claim right together, so that it's easier for your audience to know what your main claim is. It should also be concise. Sometimes what happens is that students will have kind of elements of their claim all across their first couple of pages. I want you to have a clear, specific thesis that is one or two sentences long. If it's two sentences, they should come back to back and they should be in the introduction. If it's one sentence, it's generally, to add in the reasons and everything, it's generally a longer, more complex sentence. So here's some examples of things that are not a thesis. So your inquiry question that you already made and that is now guiding your research, that's an important component of this unit, but it's not your thesis. So this example, what is the best breakfast for busy college students and why? That's a fine inquiry question, but it's a question. It's not a claim. You're not making some kind of claim. You're just asking the question that'll guide your research. This is a purpose statement, this example. So in this paper, I will talk about the best breakfast for busy college students. This happens sometimes where students confuse a purpose statement with a claim. In a claim, you have to be arguing something. So the only thing argued in this sentence is what the writer is going to talk about. They're arguing that they're going to talk about the best breakfast food. And that's not really the type of debatable argumentative claim that we're looking for in a thesis. So this is a purpose statement. You don't need one of these in your paper. And in fact, in an argument paper, you shouldn't have one in the one that we're doing for this class. I just want you to have that clear thesis near the beginning. So here's the thesis statement. Donuts are the best breakfast food for busy college students because they are cheap, convenient, and widely available. So you can see a couple important things about the thesis statement here. One is that it makes a claim. Donuts are the best breakfast for busy college students. That's a claim. It's arguing that that's true. A counter argument would be, no, it's not the best breakfast food for busy college students. And then it says because. Those are the reasons that follow because. Because they are cheap, because they are convenient, because they are widely available. So a note I want to make here is that reasons back up the claim. They're not just some things you're going to talk about. They're important ideas that help to prove the claim. So the claim is donuts are the best breakfast for busy college students. A reason is that they're cheap. So then you'd have to make the tie in your paper to say, okay, donuts are cheap. Cheap things are better breakfast for college students because they don't tend to have that much money. Therefore, donuts being cheap makes them the best breakfast food, or is part of what makes them the best breakfast food. Same with easy to carry around with you. You might argue that college students are often on the go. Having something, that's not like a plate of eggs, something that's easier to carry around is important. And so you make the connection back that therefore the thesis is true. Therefore, donuts are the best breakfast food. So reasons back up your claim. And then, if you say they're cheap, donuts are cheap, and therefore they're better, your audience might say, sure, that makes sense. A cheap breakfast is good for a college student. But then they might say, how do we know they're cheap? And so that's why you need evidence. Your reason supports your thesis or your claim, but if you don't back it up with evidence from credible sources, then how do we know that it's true? The reason. So you say they're cheap, and you say, okay, I can prove that they're cheap. At Safeway, here's what they cost. Here's what they cost at Lamar's. That evidence backs up the reason, which proves the thesis. So you make a claim for your paper that's specific and clear, and then you have reasons, which are usually a because statements. This is true because this and this. And then you have evidence which backs up those reasons. So, like I was just saying, looking at the chart, writers support their argument with mini claims. Those reasons tend to be mini claims. So, donuts are cheap is also a claim, and it's a claim that goes under your thesis. So, your argument, your claim should be debatable, like I said earlier, and these reasons should show why you think that the argument you're making is true. Like I said, these are often because statements. Evidence, again, is to support those reasons. So, evidence can include quotations from experts, firsthand experiences, statistics, etc. They're generally not big sweeping ideas. They're generally more nitpicky, getting into your sources, giving the specific pieces of information that help to prove help to back up your reasons, which help to prove your thesis. So just as a last note here, we've got this chart I find can be helpful. And so if you're thinking about how to structure a paper, an argument paper, and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, just come back to this chart. You need a clear, concise, debatable, specific claim or thesis. So you're doing your research based on your inquiry question, and in the end, you need to make an argument. The research has shown you the answer to your inquiry question. That becomes your claim. Then you need mini claims. They're usually mini claims, reasons that prove your thesis. This is the thesis, and it's true because this, this, and this. Then, as you're doing your research, you need to be organizing your evidence. Pieces of information that will back up those reasons help help your ethos, your credibility, because your audience will say, okay, how do I know this stuff's true? You get in the body of your paper, you say, here's the evidence. They say, okay, that does support the reasons, and those reasons do logically prove the thesis, and so the thesis must be true. That's sort of the general structure of this kind of paper, and we'll be working more in class and with homework to develop these things as we get closer to the paper being due.